Hello, and welcome to Tea and Gumboots, a limited series podcast that spills the tea on what it's really like to be a physician associate in New Zealand, served with a side of Kiwi charm. Here on Tea and Gumboots, we explore the unique journey of PAs who've made the leap from the US, UK, or Canada to Aotearoa. From adjusting to a new healthcare system to embracing New Zealand's famous work-life balance, we uncover the insights, challenges, and unforgettable moments that come with life in the land of the long white cloud. So, grab a cuppa, slip on your gumboots, and let's dive in.
Well, thanks for joining us on our episode 1 of Tea and Gumboots Limited Series podcast. Our first episode today is going to be on work-life balance for PAs in New Zealand. And we've got here two fantastic guests, Ryan Narciso and Shelley Collins. Thank you both for joining us today. I thought we'd start off with just, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you come from? Where do you hail from? How long you been here? A little bit of that. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan, and I am a physician associate. I moved here from Washington, but I actually did my training on the East Coast in Connecticut. So clinically, I was a medical assistant before I went to PA school. And after PA school, about 13 years ago is when I graduated. I worked in primary care in Boston. And then when I moved back to Washington to be closer to my family, I worked in urgent care. And I moved to New Zealand a little over a year now. So a few months ago, celebrated my year anniversary, and I have not regretted the decision of moving here and working as a physician associate here in New Zealand. And I'm sure we'll dive a little bit more into that as the interview goes on.
Thanks. Shelley?
Kia ora, everybody. I'm Shelley Collins. I initially graduated from OU, Oklahoma University in Oklahoma, almost 20 years ago, which seems crazy. I worked mostly in family practice and urgent care over the past 20 years. I did a short stint in an ORL specialty, and I've also worked several years in PA education as well as a professor in a couple of different PA universities. I was also in Washington right before I moved. I was working in urgent care in Seattle and was working some fun 12-hour shifts and doing all of that thing before I moved over in January of 2020 with my husband and our then 12-year-old daughter.
Nice. So you guys represent some pretty different perspectives as far as work-life balance goes, just simply because, Shelley, you are married and Ryan, you're single, right? And you've been here a little bit longer, been practicing a little bit less, I suppose. So the work-life balance topic came up as a no-brainer for the first episode simply because we did a PA survey of PAs who are working in New Zealand currently, and we asked them lots of questions about their satisfaction, about what motivated them to move over here, for example, and the number one answer for that question was work-life balance. What motivated you to consider moving to New Zealand? So we thought that would be a perfect topic to start off on because it's important for a lot of people, obviously. So I guess with a little bit of background that we have for you guys now, why don't you tell us a little bit about your work-life balance before you moved? What were you doing? What was life like? And maybe what you were expecting life to be like here when you moved?
Well, what is work-life balance exactly? I feel like it's one of those terms that just get thrown out there as you enter the career world, and nobody really knows what it means until you've been in the game for a while. Because I think it has an actually a very individual meaning depending on the person you're asking. And so I think it goes without saying that so many healthcare professionals are burnt out around the world. We're experiencing caregiver fatigue. So many of us are overworked and unfortunately many feel underappreciated. And for me, that was that was the sense I had for my situation being in the U.S. Um, the U.S. For better or for worse, there's this energy of like more, better, faster, stronger, do it more, right? And it's a bit of a rat race, I think a lot of people will call it, right? And I wanted to get off. I wanted to get off the ride. I was like, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And I honestly felt like the situation wasn't getting any better personally. It felt a bit stagnant there. Um, and I'll kind of compare my experiences with primary care, since that's what I'm doing here now in a rural clinic. So primary care for me, firstly, the hours were a lot longer in the US. I started seeing patients at 8, and I remember telling so many of my friends when we tried to make plans, trying to achieve this work-life balance thing, this very elusive concept. I would tell my friends like, yo, so yeah, I could totally come out for dinner, or yeah, we could go see this show or this concert. Uh, so I'm supposed to be done seeing patients at 5, but we all know that never meant you left at 5, right? So you had to have this little buffer, this little window at the end of your day. And it would really affect a lot of the plans I made in my life, in my personal life. And so work felt like it was encroaching on that. Um, and that was something that I was looking to change in my world, in my life, and I just didn't see that opportunity in the U.S. from the places that I've worked and the places that I was looking at, and so that was something I looked for here in New Zealand. And I have to say, what was really funny when I first started working here is about like maybe 5 to 10 5 minutes, 10 minutes till 5 o'clock when our clinic closed. You could already see like the staff is kind of like packing up. They're like checking out. They're ready to go. And once it was 5 o'clock, you best believe people were like, "Have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow." And that wasn't just the front desk staff, the medical assistants, the nurses. No, the docs were like, "Peace out. It is 5 o'clock. I am done. I am out of here." So and I have another PA from the US working in the clinic. And as everyone was saying their goodbyes, you'd hear like, "Oh, who's left? Who's left? Is there anyone left here before we lock up and set the alarm?" And one of my bosses, Shelly and Brian, you met her, Haley Scott. She was like, "Oh, of course, it's the Americans. The Americans are the ones still furiously typing on their computers and doing this and that." And what that really shared with me is that the culture here in New Zealand, the Kiwi culture, is definitely having that work-life balance. And when the day is done, the day is done, and no one expects you to stay late. That's not part of the culture here, as I feel it is in the US.
Yeah.
So that was like one big thing.
Well, yeah, he brings up a pretty interesting point about the definition of work-life balance. I guess maybe a lot of people would define that as the balance between doing stuff you want and doing stuff you have to do. So, as someone who was putting in 12 hours regularly, Shelley, what was it like where you were working in Washington?
So it was definitely very similar to Ryan's experience. You're just working flat out from beginning to end, and they expect you to be there, and they expect you to work through lunch if you need to, and sometimes you have to stay late. And if you ever need to go home early, it's a huge deal because you can't get off and you can't go and do things that you need to do. And heaven forbid your child gets sick and you call in and can't come to work. It's a whole thing. And yeah, just like Ryan, it's been such a difference here. One of the big differences, first thing out, is when I was interviewing at the clinic. I'm at a GP clinic right now in South Auckland. And when I was interviewing for the clinic, they said, "Well, what day of the week do you want as your day off?" I said, "What are you talking about?"
Yes.
And the doctor said, "I don't recommend you work more than 4 days a week. You're going to get burned out. Just don't do that." And so they didn't want me to work 5 days a week. They were like, you need at least one day off to do your thing and kind of relax. And that's how everybody works up here. And you're absolutely right, Ryan. They're often annoyed if I'm still there when the door is supposed to be locked. They'll be like, "Okay, well, you're locking the door. We're all gone."
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been really great, and especially as someone who has a child, I know a lot of the nurses I work with have even younger children, have babies and really young ones. And if they call in first thing in the morning and say, "Look, sorry, my kiddo's sick and they can't go to daycare, I have to stay home," no one makes a big fuss about it. Everybody just goes, "Oh yeah, so and so's baby's sick today, and so she's going to be out," and it's not a thing at all.
So it sounds like the idea of the Kiwi sort of laid back lifestyle is for real. Then you would say you would tell someone who was considering this, yes, this is a for real thing.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of my supervising doctors will revolt if we take away their day off because they go golfing and fishing and they look forward to it all week. And so their one day a week
Yes.
off is sacrosanct. Do
Yes.
not touch it.
Yeah. I mean, I would have to say, like, making so there are unexpected things that happen, like Shelley mentioned, where you get sick or a family member gets sick and you need to take time off. And I would have to say I felt the same thing. Like I got COVID after like flying back home to the US to visit my family. I got COVID on the plane and I didn't, have symptoms until maybe the second day back at work. And like the moment I got sick, my job was like, go home, like go rest,
Mhm.
and we'll just check in with you in a couple of days and see if you're ready to come back to work. But there's definitely no rush. Like the amount of emphasis that I feel my clinic, and I'm sure it sounds like Shelley's clinic and several other clinics here in the US, is like, take care of your health. Like work is a part of
Mhm.
life. I feel like Kiwis are hardworking and they value work in general, but life isn't about work. Like work isn't
Right.
like the means to the end. It's just like a part of it. Whereas I feel in the US, it's like you work hard to amass wealth and amass material belongings. And that's just like not a thing here. And you feel that when you get to leave work on time, when you actually have a lunch break and no one looks at you funny because you're like chit chatting about, TV shows or hikes during a lunch
Hmm.
break. Like they encourage that. And that was so refreshing, so refreshing.
So, someone listening might say, oh, okay, well, that all sounds really great, Shelley, but that's got to have a downside. If everybody's sort of like, well, I need to take off for this or I need to take off for that, how does that affect life in the clinic with shortages? I mean, if people were kind of a little bit loose with taking off, I mean, does that make things hard at the clinic? Are you shorthanded?
Well, I guess sometimes you can be when there's more than one provider out or more than one nurse out. It certainly can be. But I feel like nobody resents it. I mean, everybody has to work a little bit harder on that day and pick up the slack on that day, but they know it's just going to be a day or two and then we'll be back to normal. And then we also know that when it's our turn to be off, nobody's going to have a big fit about it either.
Hmm. Has that been your experience, Ryan?
Oh, for sure. Um, I think it really depends on your work environment, but I feel there's something just maybe within the work culture here in New Zealand where it's just expected that people get sick, emergencies come up, and you just do the best with what you can with the resources available. There's not, I don't feel like there's a lot of energy or time spent on like people being all butthurt or being so angry and upset at someone for having to miss work. Like, I don't think there's a lot of energy wasted in that. It's just like, oh, okay, so Ryan's going to be out today. Front desk, please call their patients and try to reschedule them, and we'll just do our best. And that's just, it's not a thing, you know?
Yeah, and I would add to that too that I'm glad you mentioned patience because it's not just in the workplace. I feel like the whole country kind of understands this concept as well. Because if we have two or three docs out in one week and we're just kind of, barely going on skeletal staff, whenever patients call in, the front desk will say, "Look, we've got a couple doctors out and we just can't get you in this week and, can we compromise?" The patients are understanding as well. They don't have throw a
Yes.
fit and they're not furious. They understand that these things happen, and so their patients are incredibly patient here. I've been
Yes.
very
Yes.
surprised.
Agreed.
So it sounds like there's just a general understanding among the culture and within the medical community that these things are going to happen and that there's a lot less sort of guilt you might feel for asking off or needing to take off, because there seems to be a little bit more understanding. So let's talk about what are some real world changes from the work-life balance, however you want to define that, that you described in the beginning, and how is that actually translated into change here? Both, we talked some about work, but what about personally, those times when you called your friends, Ryan, and you didn't have time? I'm assuming you have more time for that now. Tell us about how your work-life balance has changed.
Yeah. So I feel that I have adequate time here to see my patients. That's been my experience. Like when I looked at my template, and I was like, what are all these spots here that are like filled in? And my clinic manager was like, oh, those are your breaks. I was like, what? I get breaks in my schedule? I was like, that's such a foreign concept to me. And so because I have these little breaks to like catch up on notes or whatever, if I'm running behind, um, it's not like there's more work being added on to me. There's like this buffer in place. And so I feel like for me, and maybe many of you that are listening, one of the challenges is like the paperwork part of your clinic day, writing the notes, doing the prior auths, filling out paperwork, all those types of things. But there's all these windows for me to get that stuff done without adding on to my workday, right? Like it's already just built into my schedule, built into my template. So if I run behind, it's not necessarily meaning I have to stay behind that day and work over my time schedule. And so knowing that I can get off work at time, yeah, I could totally say, hey, let's meet up for dinner. I'll arrive at this time. And just being able to even know that I can go home and relax on time, that I have the time even at home to do the things that I would like to do within my 24-hour day, right? That when I leave work, like I'm leaving work, I don't have to go home and chart some more. I don't have to like go home and worry about taking call or getting a phone call about like something that happened in a clinic. When my day is done, it's done. And the rest of the day is for me to do whatever I want to do with it. And you best believe, just like Shelly, I'm enjoying this 4-day work week. So I have that day off where I can like run my errands. If I have, a dentist appointment or a medical appointment, I can do it then. If I have to go, do things at the bank or whatever, like I have that work day to have a social life, take care of my responsibilities as it comes to bills and all that type of stuff, without having to like, oh, I guess I'll do it on the weekend when I should be relaxing and I should be like going to the beach or going on a hike or whatever. Like, no, there's plenty of time for that. And I think part of being in New Zealand and being away from the US, you get to be a little bit more selective of how you use your time. And there's not so many things pulling you in all these directions. Because in the US, like, there's always something going on and it's hard to keep up with it. But here you can have that space for you to actually relax.
It sounds like one of the complaints that a lot of just American worker, or I've always felt as an American worker, is that when you take a vacation, usually what that means from work, usually what that means is you've worked twice as hard the week before and the week after in order to make up for it. All you're doing, you're not getting necessarily a break, you're just shoveling around time, you're just shifting around time. It sounds like that's a little less the way it is here for you, Ryan. Is that sort of been your experience, Shelley?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's Ryan's 100% correct on that. And even with the little built-in admin times and times to kind of catch up, when you get off at 5 or 5:30 or whenever, you're not totally exhausted either. So you can go home and relax, or you can go out and have dinner, or you don't just collapse on the couch, and you actually have the energy to do things. And another cool thing about the culture is that they take their holidays seriously. For example, Christmas, the time between Christmas and New Year's, our clinic's completely closed. We're just closed down for the whole time. Now, that also means that a lot of other things are closed down for the whole time, so you got to plan ahead. But everybody's off, everybody's enjoying the holidays and their families, and it's just chill and relaxed, and it's really nice.
Cool. Okay, I think we would kind of close our discussion. This has been really informative with maybe just some pieces of advice for people who might be considering making moves based upon looking for a better work-life balance, or however they define that. So, what would be some lessons learned from you guys, like two or three things? So you're talking to one of your friends. They're like, "Oh, this kind of sounds nice." What would you tell them other than what you've already said? Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. And framing it in this in the context of our conversation as well. Uh, I mean, I would say the biggest challenge for me coming to New Zealand is to slow down. That was the biggest shift for me because I was so used to that go, 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 do, 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 do. And 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 the only person that's actually pressuring you to be that way here in New Zealand is yourself.
Mm.
And so being able to actually relax into what you're doing, right? Um, I know sometimes when I was in the US, when I was running behind, my mind was already trying to think of the next patient and what I had to do next without staying present in the moment with who I'm working with. And here, like you have the opportunity to be present, you have the opportunity to slow down. Um, and so, my advice for people is just embrace that culture here of a little bit more laid back, of a little bit more being here in that moment and addressing what's in front of you and not worrying about what's to come, what's to come, what's to come.
So you would probably suggest to someone who was more of like an A type personality, someone who enjoyed that kind of pace and that kind of challenge and always thinking and always being pressured, that they may have a difficult adjustment to New Zealand work, right?
Yes, yes, and especially Shell is mentioning about patience
Mhm.
and being patient, and the healthcare system is a little bit slower when you're trying to get in to see a specialist when you're referring patients, and so again, uh, being comfortable with the pace, this natural pace, because I think in the US, there's this pace of you have to go fast or else there's this panic that comes in. And so don't if you're coming here or when you come here, just surrender that. Surrender that. Okay? Surrender that it has to happen now kind of attitude because a lot of times it doesn't. And I think that was a big adjustment for me.
I mean, you think so? It was pretty tough for you to make that adjustment, huh?
It's so shockingly it was. Like you live in the US and you want things to just slow down. And then when it
Mhm.
finally does, when you come here to New Zealand, you're like, WTH. So embrace that. That would be my advice. And if that's not your jam, don't come here. If you like things done now, if you like things done fast, honey, this ain't the spot for you because that's not how it flows.
Well, that was definitely an attitude that we found in our survey. Was many people had commented on, this slower pace of life, and most people seem to embrace it and get used to it. Some didn't though, and it's a good point and something that people should really think about is, uh, would you miss it? Would you miss that pace? Because a lot of people do like that, and they might consider it boring. Some people don't. What about you, Shelley? What you got? Any some wise words of advice for folks?
So kind of going along with that same idea of your own work going a little bit slower in your own work life a little bit slower is that the entire country runs on that time frame as well. So unlike America where I could walk into any super Walmart at midnight and get anything I want, anything I desire, that's not going to happen here. First of all stores, even the big stores, will close at 8 or 9 o'clock, and you can't even get anything after that. Small town stores will close at 5 o'clock, so you're out of luck after that.
Yeah.
And just forget getting anything delivered to you overnight. That's not an option. So if you really, really enjoy being able to get anything you want, anytime you want, and that kind of whole fast-paced sort of lifestyle, that will be a bit of an adjustment as well.
I think that's a fantastic point, and one we could probably close on is sort of a summation of the idea that, you know, there really is there's a trade-off between having more time to do what you want. When people go, well, it's time to go home. Well, everybody goes home, and that's everybody, right? That's the people that you depend on to give you your Big Macs and all that stuff. So you have to realize that when you get here, that you can slow down and you can take it easy, but there is a sacrifice that everybody else is going to want to do the same thing. It's not America where you get everything you want when you want it delivered to you by a drone. It's when you get stuff when you can get it when the office is open. And otherwise, you just do without, right? Some people can handle that and some people can't. So I'll leave that as sort of the final idea. And I appreciate you both for coming on here, giving us these wonderful insights on work-life balance. I think it's been a great discussion. And I'm glad that you guys were able to bring a couple of different perspectives from your different work-life balances and lives in general. So thank you very much, and we will see you next time.